This is just a quick and dirty tutorial to get you started with FormTools. FormTools is a simple web form generation app that's a script that is available at formtools.org. The particular module that I am going to be showing you on is the easiest to use, and it does cost. It's to get this module. The whole package that you will see here cost me $99. I use the module that they provide because it makes it so that you can simply create forms using templates and you don't have to know HTML or anything like that, and it's just quick and easy to use. So with that being said, I will cover some of the basics. When you log into FormTools, you will get a page that looks like this. And you will see any forms that you have. Now, I created just a test form there a second ago. I'm going to delete that. So, first step is we say add form, and it's going to give you an option for internal, external, or form builder. Like I say, form builder is an add-on module that you have to purchase. This is the module that I will be focusing on. Internal is a form that simply can only have data added to this form if you're logged into it. You have to be logged into FormTools to add data. It's more for like administrative purposes. If you want to make a simple little database to add stuff, you could use it for that. External means you generate your own HTML page, and then that page will submit its post data to FormTools to store in the database that's in FormTools. And then Form Builder allows you to simply select all your fields that you're going to have, and it will allow it to generate a form using templates. And then you just include a link to that form either by an iframe or something to that method to have the form display on your page. So we're going to use Form Builder. We hit select, and we give it a name. And you want to make it public so people can actually post on this form. We say add form. Then you come to this page, and I'm actually going to use a form that's already started, and we will go through it with that form that's already been started. So that's how you get a form started. So let's go back to forms, and I'm going to delete that test because I don't actually keep that in my thing there. And we are going to go to this form here, and it'll say what kind it is. It's a form builder, and we're going to edit it. And here we go. That's the page you saw earlier when I created a new form. This is simple, to the point. Do you want the form to be offline, online, whatever? You can change the form name here. If you want to switch it to an internal form later or to an external form, you can do that. But again, we want it as a form builder form. You can always change it from public to private or as an administration only form. Do you want it to delete associated files? If the form has attached pictures that go into it, and you want, when those forms submissions are deleted, do you want the attached pictures or whatever attached files to be deleted as well? That's where this comes in. Strip tags from form submissions. That's HTML tags. If somebody tries to submit an HTML code to the page on their web submission, you can tell it to strip tags. I recommend strongly telling it to do that. For security purposes, then people can't force any HTML to your browser when you're trying to view forms. And also, if they put wrong code in there, it'll really jack up the page. So it's best just to leave that to yes. The label for edit submissions is simply that. There's a button that you can click on that says edit submissions, and if you want the label to show that phrasing, that's what that means. And then again, also add submissions button. So what this means is when you want to add a submission, you have language files, and you can pick a different language file, or you can just hard code wording here. But there is actually templates for different languages, and so they're set this up to use one of those templates based on the language that the form is going to be displayed in. But you could actually put, you know, whatever you want there. So now we're going to go, mainly you're not going to change these. You want to get going quick, you're not going to change them. So we're going to go to fields. Now he's already got some fields in here. When you first start, it's going to have some default fields. The date, the modified date, the IP, and the ID are always in the form by start. And then if you said to create it with 5 records, or 5 fields, it's going to start out with 5 fields. And you do your display text. This is the text that's actually going to show on the web page when people see the form. The form field. This is the actual name of the field that's in the database. Then you have the type of field it's going to be. And this is pretty standard to HTML. You have a text box. An example of a text box is this. It's one line that you can type in. So this field that I'm typing in right now is a text box. The other option you have is a text area. And you're probably familiar with text areas. Text areas are where you can type a comments or such like that. And I'll go ahead and select one of these as a text area so you can see. Let's keep this one text box. We want the name to be that. Street, city, zip, all those are fine. State is a drop down, which you can get really fancy with this. If you want to be quick, you can just make them type their state in and keep it a text box, but there is a way to make it so it'll drop down a list of states. For this tutorial, I'm going to just keep this text box and they have to just type their state in. And that can be a different, like I say, this is just quick and dirty. Let's go ahead and we want to add site description. So now we're going to add a field to the thing, to the form. So we want to add just one field. You could add 4, 5, 6, whatever. And you can just say at the end, you can move them at any time. So it doesn't matter. You can say after, before, whatever. I just leave it because if you can move it, why waste your time? And we go add. So now we want to call this site description. Okay. Description. And we want to go ahead and make that a text area. And you'll see what that means. Now, like I say, there's some other things on this page I'm not covering because we're trying to get to the simple meat of how to just get started with FormTools. So I'm going to update this page, but I also want to move this. I want to move it up here. So you just drag it. There you go. And we update. Oh, you have to give the columns names. With this, you also, when this information comes up here, you'll see options. For example, character size. Obviously less than 256 characters. Nobody's going to have a name that long. You can actually be more specific. You could say small, only allow 20 characters. Because we only have a name field, and it could be a company name, it could be a person's name. We're going to go ahead and leave it at 256. Large is, for example, 65,000 characters, I believe. On a text field is 65,000 characters. Medium text is somewhere in between. But generally, that's the idea. It just means it'll allow more information to be stored. Otherwise, it just truncates it and cuts off the end. So, also, what is it? Is it a string? It's not a number. It can be a number or a string, but we want it to be text. And I just generally always, unless you're going to do something fancy, I just leave everything string. Now, what we can do is for submission ID, let's go ahead and name these. All right. Now, we'll go ahead and save this. There we go. And again, you can just keep adding records. Let's cover some of the other items here. You have a drop down, which is, well, like for example, when I click on this, that's a drop down. That requires other sections to be used, and that's not going to be covered in this tutorial. You have a multi-select drop down, which means that you can select more than one item in the list. You have radial buttons, which are the little round things, and you can only select one or the other, and the button highlights depending on which one you check. You have check boxes. These, of course, are the check boxes. You can have check boxes like this that you can go and check. So you can have those kind of things on the form. Then you have, if you want to upload a file, then you can change it to that, and it'll actually give you a file upload where you can browse your hard drive and pick a file to upload, and that's what that is for. Coming on the form, what's built in is the submission date, the modified date, the IP address. Those are all part that's always stored with the form. So that's a quick overview of that. So after you've set that up, you go to the next step. Oh, and by the way, if you haven't figured out, X deletes the field. And this little thing here is the edit to edit the field. So what is an edit the field? Basically, it's more elaborate. When you saw that error and it scrolled over and it said those things I had to fill out, that's it here. You've got display name, form field name. You can precisely, this is the same drop down as on the other page. Pass it on is for if you have multiple pages, stuff like that. It's not going to be covered in this tutorial. This again, you can change your text size, whatever, and we don't actually need the name to be large text. I don't know why I changed it to that. The type, and then the column name. Remember, that was that ID that I put in there. So name. Then you have settings. So you have the size of how it's going to look. Do you want it to use the default size? Do you want it to be the full width of the field? Do you want it to be a smaller, medium, large? This is the size of the text box. So you could have a text box that is you can control how that looks in appearance. You can set the max length. Do you only want the text box to only allow a certain length to be typed into it? Do you want highlighting to work? And so, for example, you can have highlighting turned on, red, blue, green. These are obvious little things that you'll see as you do that with it. And you can have filled comments. Here. Okay. And then validation. Validation is the little errors that pop up when the person is filling out the form and it says, oh, you need to fill this out. We require this information, and that kind of stuff. So, for example, if you want the name to be required, you check it. It's not an email address. You don't care if it has numbers. You don't care if it has letters. You don't care if it's only letters and numbers, upper and lower case. You just want to make sure it's required. It has some default text you can put in there, and we hit save. Another one is we want to require the state and the street and the city. So you could go through and do all that. Now, email. We want to require the email, but we also want to make sure it's a valid email address. And they don't just make something up that's not an @ whatever. So we can tell it to also not only require it, but make sure it's valid. So that's just an example of what you can do in those settings. So once that's all done, those settings are saved automatically. Now we go to views. So the basic view will come up as a form builder view. So we're going to just be to the point though. We're going to edit the current view. And in the view, you've got how many submissions per page are you going to see. And actually, maybe I should show you what the view is. The view actually covers two parts. What an administrator sees when he's logged in, and how it looks on the actual template. So to show you how a view affects what the administrator sees when he's logged in, let's go to Forms, and we're going to just pick one of these other forms. Contact us. Oops, sorry. Let's go back again. Views. All right. So this is an example of a view. Notice And here, allows the person to see any of their data. Now you can alter this, but you can tell it, do you want to show the comments, whatever fields it wants to show, first name, last name, the ticket number, the date it was purchased. Then you can edit the view to see more information. That is the view, and how many of these show on each page. This is one of the views, and then the other view, of course, is the actual template that people see when they fill out the form. So all that is controlled under views. So let's go back to my SEO, and we're going to edit it, and we're now in views. So for example, how many submissions to list on each page? 10 is the default. Default sort order by date. Do you want public access, manage client omit lists, or do you want administrators only? And then will they be able to delete submissions from it? And we want to say yes. Can they add submissions from the view, etc., etc. And then you can do some default settings. But again, not necessary to get started. Let me show you what that means though when it says, do you want to add submissions? So now say they're in this view here. They don't actually have to go to the form page to do it. They can actually add a submission right here, and it'll take them to the form, and they can just fill it out. So if they want to add information to it, they can do it here as an administrator. And back on track here. Let's go back into this form that I'm creating. And again, pretty much for the most part, until you get further on, you aren't going to have to change these settings. You can just leave them alone. Columns. Now the columns, this section here, are the columns that are going to show in the administrator view, and that's what this is for. So in that view page where it listed first name, last name, and the date it was submitted, that's the information here. So for example, say I want the ID, name, street, city. Say I don't want street, we can delete it. We just want the name and the city. And let's go ahead and add the state. So we're going to add the state. You can tell it to just auto size. That's all these. I just use the default. Truncate. You don't have to worry about that. Whether or not you want to sort by it, I just use the default, but you will want to pick what fields you want to show. Now I may or may not be able to show that. I'm going to update that view. Let's go back to the form and let's view it. I don't have any data in there, but it should show you the columns. Let's go ahead and add a test record. Now you should see, okay, so now that's been added. There we go. So there we got, somehow I added 2 just now. So as you see, I have the state, the city, and the name based on what I selected there. Now I want to delete these. You just tag it, click delete. Oh, and if you hit edit, click here, and there you go. You can actually edit a form that's already there. But we're going to delete these 2. Did. There we go. It's because I hit back on the browser. So let's go back. So that's how that affects that page. Let's go in and edit this. So now we come to the fields section. What are fields? Fields actually have an impact directly to when the person is on the web page that they're entering the data they're submitting to you. This will have more of an impact on that. This also has an impact on views as well, but if you disable any of these options for the views as an administrator, then these things will not show up on the web page. So you would actually create 2 views, one for administrator and one for the web page if you're worried that you don't want certain people to have access to view these submissions to be able to make changes to them. But we're not going to get into that. You can get along just fine with just one view, and that's how we're going to focus right now with that. You can always add more than one view and assign it accordingly. So with the one view, it has ways to break up what's going to show up on the page, whether people can make changes to the items on the page, and If you don't want them to make changes to the zip code, simply uncheck it. If you do not want to be able to search zip code as an administrator when you're in the views section, uncheck it. Of course, if you want to move these views around and not have them actually show up on the page, you simply remove them with the X. But we can create multiple sections to the page. So for example, I just created this one. Let me delete it. So we're going to say add a new group. And in that group, oh, you notice there's site description. Now, why does only site description show up? As you recall, I added site description new. Now, this form was already started, but we're going to call this one website info. And we want to include site description. I'm going to say create group. Now, say I wanted to move, well, I want to change this group to all right, so this is the direct contact information for the customer. So actually, you'd probably have another zip code, address field, and all that, so that you actually, if they have a store that pertains to the site itself that's different than their contact information, you may want to add that. But for example, say you wanted to move this down there. You can't just drag it like that. That won't work. It's only in this group, and that's where it belongs, and that's where it's going to stay. However, you can delete it from this group, and you can add it. Now notice in Add Fields, it now shows up, and now it's on this group. And I'll show you how that has an impact later. Tabs are pages, so to speak. So we're going to call this Customer Information. Website information. Or you can completely remove your tabs if you all want on one page. I'm going to show you both. Update view. Let's go back to fields. And there we go. Customer information. Let's go ahead and have this one on website information. I can show you how it looks with pages and without pages. So we're going to add a new group just for testing purposes. We'll just call it test. Create a group. And I want to put the contact email in it. Like I say, this is just to give you an idea. So we're going to add the contact email. So basically what I did is I deleted the contact email from this group here. I hit the delete button. And then when I did that, when I go add fields, it shows up there. So now I'm going to actually have this still on the customer information page where it was, but I'll show you what happens when you group things like that. Now you can move these around. You can remove the order of those. So I could actually take this and put it on top of that. Actually, I have to take this one and move it down to there. That's the more correct way of doing it. You can't. So we're going to go ahead and go with that for an example of what I just did. Now you've got filters. This is something you're really not going to have to mess with at first. You can do standard filters. Again, there's more involved with this. This affects views for the administrators when they're looking at the pages, the query of their data. So that's what all the filters are for. So again, that's what's a little confusing because the views section handles both what the end user sees and what the administrator sees. So the next step we're going to is email. So on the email section, the first thing we want to do is configure the form email fields. We need to tell it, we want an email that's going to be sent to the person when they submit the form that says, thank you for submitting, we've got your information, yada, yada, yada. So let's tell it where it's going to get that from. So we want to select which field is the email address for the customer that we want to send to. And we're going to tell it to use their first name. And we're going to register that. So now we've created an item here for the contact email that we can tell it to send an email to. So let's go back to the email tab. Now we're going to create a new email template. And what we do here is we say site information. Again, with this section here, the checkbox, you can tell it to only send this email when somebody submits the form from the site. If you want it to send an email notifying when someone has made changes to it as an administrator, or if they delete it as an administrator, you can send emails on those events as well. Advanced settings are something you probably will not mess with for a while, so we're not going to cover that. And now we want to, and keep in mind, you can make more than one template. So for example, say this is the email you want the customer to get when they fill out the form. So now we go recipient, and now we click down and we can click contact email. Now with that being said, add, and we can tell it here whether we want to do it as a carbon copy, a blind carbon copy, because you can have more than one person added. But we're going to have one. Add that. Then we want to add again. We want a custom recipient, and we're going to say Jim Bob, and Jim Bob at whatever com, and he's a blind carbon copy, and we're going to add that. So now Jim Bob's going to get a notice that this form was filled out as well, along with the person that made the form. Thank you. All right. Who do you want it from? From whatever. So we pick custom. We say it's from. Oops, I typed John Bob. We're just typing in John Bob at yeah, you get the idea. So, and again, the reply field, and wham. Now you have the content. What is the content? Well, you can go fill out a bunch of stuff and make it word however you want for an HTML template or a text template, but I usually just pick the defaults to get started. And this is an email, as you saw, I made it so it was going to send it to an administrator and a client. So I'm going to pick the generic, and if it's an empty field, to not list it. And same here, the text is administrator and client, and that's just a template. Update. Wham. So now it's done, and then you want to make a test. And I don't have any form data to submit for the test, so, but this just makes sure that it goes through and you get a test. That is the basics of getting it going. Just so you know, you can actually make more than one email template. You can go in here and say, create a new template. So we've got this one right here. We can copy the settings from that one, or we can say a new blank one. We say create a new email. And this one is, say you wanted one that was just going to go to the customer, and you had it say certain wording, and now you want one that's just going to go to the administrator and have different wording. You can fill out the recipients. In this one, you'd only pick the administrator. On the previous one, you'd only pick the customer, and you can have multiple templates that way. Unless you really need that, for ease, just have one template like what I created. But that's how you can create more than one template, just like you can create more than one view. So we're not going to mess with that any further. So let me go back here and delete this. And delete this. It can be edited later. So now we're going to publish. And this is where you get into making the page that the end user sees. So we're going to publish the form. And bring this down here so you can see it. And like I said, you can create more than one view. Remember that view where I said what columns are going to show up as an administrator and what is editable and all that jazz? You can create more than one form view. And for this particular form, I could tell it to pick one of the other forms, one of the other views if I wanted to. But we only created the one, so that's what we're going to use. Then you've got several templates you can choose from. And by the way, this is obviously what it's going to look like right here. Let me see if I can make that page a little bigger. So you've got some sample templates here, and say apply changes. Wham. And you notice this one here has a border around it. So if you want to send somebody just to this page, you could do that. You don't have to send them to an iframe type page. Now, for example, this one again, the default one, has a border around it, so and it actually looks like it's got a shadow. So that's one that you could just send them directly to the page and not make an iframe. Again, you do have ones like this one here, which could be in an iframe if you wanted it to be. Eliminate. That could clearly be in an iframe. It doesn't have the same border. You can put any of it in an iframe, but it just depends. You can use the styles however you want, and you can actually make your own templates. There is a template editor that comes with this. I'm not getting into that today. You do not need to actually change the main templates to change the text that you see on a lot of these pages. You can do it all from this publish section. And for example, gray. Alright, so I'm just picking one. Doesn't matter. No preference. So depending on the template, it's going to have different options here. Is the form going to be online? What is it going to look like when it's offline? Well, hit apply changes. And that's what the form looks like when it's offline. You have a review page. So after they've submitted the information on the form, if they click when they hit the next page, it'll show so they can hit continue and verify that it's all accurate. If not, they can go back to the previous page. Now I want to mention, you'll notice it has two pages here. You have customer information and you have website information. Now this area here, you can't really click on these links here because this is just to help you see it. If you want to see what the two pages would look like, here you go. Here's the customer information page. And if you recall, if you remember, I did remove website information and phone number and put them in their own little group. So you notice it has its own little field here, and that's how I broke them up. Remember when I put those in two separate groups? That's what that did. Also remember where I put it on different pages? This is what's on the second page. Apparently I didn't do something right, and we'll go back and look at that. So let's do that right now. Okay, so after we close that, we can go back to views, and we want to edit the view, and we want to go to fields, and here we are. What did I have here? I had customer information. Oh, I never created one to show you. So yeah, these are going to be on the first page. I did create a second page, as you see here, but I didn't put anything on it. So you saw how I had the website information and the customer information. I didn't hit update. I forgot to update my view when I'd made all those changes. So let me do that again. That was where I screwed up. So I had made a test page. And let's move the phone number to the test page. So I delete it from that page, hit add fields, now I can go to the test page. And so again, we can move, for example, the phone number to the top. Oh, it worked that time. So now you would see three separate groups. And actually, let's go ahead and apply that. And let's go back to publish. Publish this form. And you'll see the difference. Now we have the phone number in its own little highlighted area here, customer information, and website information. So let's close this, and we'll go back to views, and to fields, edit this. And again, what can we do? You see how that works, but you can also throw things on the second page, website information. So if you want a two-page form, now we have a second page. So let's see what it looks like. Go to publish. So now we have a customer information, website information. Let's see what website information looks like. Oh, there's the website information page, see? And then once they continue past that, then it'll take them to the preview page. and they can navigate back and forth between these pages, excuse me, and then a thank you page. So that shows you how you can break the pages up. If you do not want a review page, and after they fill out the data, it simply says thank you and emails it, you would say, you'd remove that. Now, you apply changes, no more review page. If you do not want a thank page, apply changes. Now, it doesn't say anything. It just submits the data. Now, again, if you want to get rid of headers, these vary depending on the template you're using, but you can alter them. For example, on this particular template, you can get rid of the header. That's what that looks like. So you easily could include that in an iframe. If you want to get rid of navigation, you got simple navigation, which looks like this. This particular one also offers numbered out navigation, which just puts numbers by it. And then you could get totally rid of the navigation if you wanted to. What do you want the continue button to do? Do you want just to say continue, or do you want to explain itself? This is page 2. You must complete all steps in order for submission to be processed. And so that's what that does. Then you have placeholders. So depending on how the template's made, you'll have different options here. And so, for example, if we want to change the placeholder to orange, we've just done that. Now you can change what's on the actual thank you page. So for example, the thank you page right now looks like this. And if you want to change that to so again, you don't actually have to make changes to the actual main template. You can add what you want right there. If you want to say something specific when it's offline, so as I showed you that offline page earlier, you can change the wording there. So that is how that works. I'll close that, and close that. And then you have some other settings which vary depending on, again, you can pick your date when you want the form to automatically go offline. Like say you're running a contest and you don't want people to sign up after a certain time. What do you want the review button to look like? What do you want the thank you button to look like? So for example, let's go back and say include the review, include the thank you, and let's turn the navigation back on. We're saying what do we want it to say here and what do we want to say here. So alright, apply changes. Now these two buttons say check your work and goodbye. So that gives you an idea of how that works. So now once you've got that done, and keep in mind you can have more than one form for more than one layout for each form. So we're going to go ahead and save this. So we applied changes. Let's go ahead and save it. And we've never published this one, so we're going to publish it. And if you've got your directory all set up, you're going to tell it what you want to call it. You're going to call it SEO information. And everything should be set up and good to go. You say publish, and it gives you a link to the form. You copy this link, and you can paste it in the browser. And there it is. It's ready to go. The real form, and it'll start adding data to the site. So that gets you started. Like I say, it's a quick and dirty get started tutorial. There are many more things you can do with it, but have fun.